Have you ever stopped to think about how a crazy rumor starts to spread, or why a stock market suddenly panics, or even how a small team comes up with a world-changing idea? For decades, trying to understand how groups of people think and act together has been one of the biggest puzzles in science. But now, it looks like researchers have a new key to unlock it. Large language models, yeah, the same AI behind tools like ChatGPT, are being used in a totally new way to finally decode the science of us. I want you to really think about this for a second. Imagine a flight simulator, but instead of a plane, you're flying a society. A safe, digital sandbox where you could test drive a new public policy before it ever hits the real world, or see how a creative idea might catch on in different kinds of social circles. That's really the heart of this whole thing, using AI to create controlled environments to understand and maybe even predict the super complex dance of human groups. So, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to dig into why studying groups is so incredibly hard in the first place. Then, we'll check out the new AI toolkit scientists are getting so excited about. We'll look at a few mind-blowing experiments that are already happening, but we'll also read the fine print, the big risks we have to keep an eye on. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with what this actually means for you. Okay, so what makes this so difficult? Just think about a brainstorming session on a work call. The final idea depends on who's in the room, what they know, their cultural background, how well they get along. It's just a dizzying number of variables. Now try to scale that up to a whole company or an entire country. That's the massive challenge that scientists call collective cognition. Collective cognition is, at its core, the science of group intelligence. It's not about how smart any one of us is individually. It's about the magic, the intelligence that emerges when we all interact. It's the secret sauce that lets us build cities, have scientific breakthroughs, and run a global economy. All things that are way, way beyond what any single person could ever dream of doing alone. To really get a handle on this, researchers think about the problem along 3 different lines, or axes of complexity. First up, you've got structural complexity. That's just the question of who's connected to whom. A small, tight-knit team works totally differently than a massive, sprawling social network. Second, there's interactional complexity. This is all about the quality of the conversations, the history between people. And third, there's individual complexity. Every single person brings their own unique baggage, their beliefs, their skills, their culture. Trying to juggle all 3 of those at once has been a total nightmare for researchers. And this, right here, is where the new AI toolkit changes the game. See, instead of just thinking of LLMs as fancy chatbots, scientists are starting to use them as these incredibly versatile lab instruments that can play all sorts of different roles in their social experiments. The research lays out 5 main jobs an LLM can do. It can be a participant in the experiment, an interviewer asking questions, the environment the experiment takes place in, a router guiding conversations, or an analyst crunching the data. Each one of these roles is a new way to get a handle on one of those thorny complexities we just talked about. Let's break them down real quick.
First, the AI can be a participant. Imagine adding hundreds of AI agents, each with a specific personality, into a social network just to see how the humans react. Or it can act as an interviewer, asking targeted questions to thousands of people all at once, something that would be impossible to do with human researchers. It can even be the environment. Think of it like a dungeon master in a game, creating a dynamic, interactive world for people to play in and respond to. When you have huge group discussions, an AI can be a router, pulling together all the different arguments and helping the group find a path to consensus. And finally, it can be the analyst. It can chew through mountains of messy, unstructured data like forum posts or chat logs and spot patterns that a human researcher might never see. All right, so that's the theory, but this isn't just some sci-fi idea. Researchers are already putting this AI toolkit to the test in some really amazing ways. Let's look at a couple of recent studies that show what's possible. So, check this out. It's a perfect example of the router role. A 2024 study by Tesler and his team took on a massive challenge. How do you help people find common ground on really polarizing topics? They had an LLM summarize all the arguments from over 5,000 people. Then, the humans would read and critique those AI summaries. And guess what? It actually worked. The process helped this huge, diverse group find points of agreement. It's a direct shot at managing that tricky interactional complexity.
But what about when AIs are participants? A study from Shi, Ku, and colleagues is super interesting here. They had groups of people rewrite stories together in a social network. The all-human groups, they came up with a decent amount of creative diversity. The all-AI groups? Actually, not very diverse at all. But the hybrid groups, the ones with both humans and AIs working together, they produced the most creative diversity. It suggests that adding AI to the mix can actually spark more creativity in the whole group.
Now, this all sounds incredibly promising, I know. But, and this is a really big but, like with any powerful new technology, we absolutely have to read the fine print. There are some serious risks here that scientists are and should be wrestling with. The paper lays out 5 major red flags. First, cultural gaps. These AI models are trained on data from the internet, which often means they have a very narrow, Western-centric view. Then there's homogenization, this tendency for AIs to kind of smooth out the rough edges of human behavior. Interpretability is that classic black box problem. We don't always know why the AI is doing what it's doing. Reproducibility is a huge problem for science. If the company behind the AI updates their model, an entire experiment could become impossible to repeat. And finally, cost. These experiments are wildly expensive, and that risks creating a world where only the richest labs can do this kind of cutting-edge research. Let's just focus on that risk of homogenization for a second, because it's a really big deal. The whole reason we study groups is to understand the messy, beautiful, unpredictable diversity of how humans act. But if the very tool you're using to study that diversity is secretly making everyone sound more alike, well, then you're not really studying humans anymore. You're just studying the AI.
Okay, so this isn't just about scientists in ivory towers. These exact same AI tools are already popping up in our everyday lives, whether it's in our social media feeds or the software we use at work. So, how can we navigate this new world without getting fooled?
Here's a quick little guide. First, anytime you see something that claims an AI helped us find consensus, get a little skeptical. Ask yourself, what different opinions might have been sanded down or edited out to get there? Second, always ask who isn't in the data. Whose culture, whose language, whose perspective is this AI completely missing? And finally, let's just make a conscious effort to value human diversity. In a world that's getting pushed toward AI-driven sameness, our quirks, our disagreements, our unpredictability, those aren't bugs, they're features. They're what makes us human.
So what's the solution? The paper argues pretty convincingly that the only way forward is through collaboration. The people who really understand human behavior, the cognitive scientists, and the people who build these powerful AI models, the computational scientists, they have to start working together, hand in glove. It's really the only way we're going to build tools that are not just powerful, but also responsible and fair. And that leaves us with one last big question. We're at the very beginning of having this flight simulator for societies. We can start to model things we never could before: creativity, consensus, maybe even the evolution of culture. So where should we point this powerful new microscope next? What part of our collective lives do you think is the most important for us to understand?